So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Namaste. Welcome back to one more session of the Gita. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navadhi Tamastuma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We had gone through good part of the 16th chapter yesterday, so I think we'll complete that and then have a quick overview of that, then go to the 17th chapter. Let me share my screen. So we had completed the 16th shloka. You can see my screen now. Yeah. So then the 17th and the 18th are to be seen together. He says, Atma Sambhavitaha Stabdha Dhana Mana Madanvitaha Yajante Nama Yajnaiste Dambhe Navidhi Purvakam. Then he says, Ahankaram Balam Darpam Kamam Krodham Cha Samshritaha Mamatma Paradeheshu Pradvishanto Bhyasuyakaha. Pradvishanto Bhyasuyakaha. So these two together talking about the nature of the demonic people. Krishna says, they are arrogant, they're stubborn, they're intoxicated by wealth and pride. They engage in worship only in name. It's a show. It's not in spirit. They focus more on pomp and show without a regard for rules and regulations. Clinging on to egoism and vanity, exhibiting force, lust, and rage, these malicious people undermine the divine presence in their own bodies and in the bodies of others. So, Atma Sambhavitaha Stabdha Dhana Mana Madanvitaha Te Dambhena Avidhi Purvakam Nama Yajnaihi Yajante Ahankaram Balam Darpam Kamam Krodham Cha Samshritaha Atma Paradeheshu Mam Pradvishantaha Abhyasuyakaha Bhavanti. So they are Atma Sambhavitaha. They are like they're so full of themselves, so arrogant, stabdha, very stubborn. Dhana Mana Madanvitaha. So they are intoxicated by wealth and by pride. Or you can also look at this as they are, possessed with, basically with money, and they're craving after money. They're craving after name and fame, and they're, intoxicated. Te dambhena, through arrogance, by focusing more on, being hypocritical, focusing on pomp and show. Avidhi purvakam. So without following any of the rules, nama yajnaihi yajante. So it's worship, it's yajna only in name. They worship only in name. It's not really that they are serious to worship. They are serious to do all the ritual. It's only in name. It's very superficial. It's mostly for showing off rather than actual driven by bhakti. Then ahankaram, balam, darpam, kamam, krodham cha samshritaha. So they are, clinging on to egoism, and balam is strength. So it's kind of raw strength or vanity also. Darpam is arrogance, again, exhibiting force. And kamam is lust, krodham is rage. So they are, taken refuge in these negative traits. And Atma Paradeheshu, so in not only in their bodies, but also in the bodies of other people, Mam Pradvishantaha Abhyasuyakaha Bhavanti. So they undermine the divine presence, not only in themselves, but also in other people. We have seen that there's divine presence everywhere, Not only do they fail to see the divine presence in themselves, they also fail to see it in others. So basically, they fail to see the divine presence everywhere. So this two verses are to be seen together, right? Atma sambhavitaha stabdha.
Atma sambhavitaha stabdhaha.
So there is no visarga at the end. So stabdha. Then dhana mana madanvitaha
Dhanamana madanvitaha.
yajante nama yajnaiste
Yajante nama yagnaiste.
dambhe navidhi purvakam.
Dambhe navidhi purvakam.
Then he says ahankaram balam darpam
Ahankaram balam darpam.
kamam krodham cha samshritaha
Kamam krodham cha sanshritaha.
mamatma paradeheshu
Mamatma paradeheshu.
pradvishantobhyasuyakaha.
Pradvishantobhyasuyakaha.
Yeah. He says tanaham dvishatah kruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipamyajasram ashubhan asurishveva yonishu. So I constantly hurl these cruel, hateful, and worst of men into demonic wombs in the vast cycles of birth and death. So the demonic womb signifies rebirth with demonic qualities, rebirth with lowly qualities. Dvishataha kruran ashubhan tan naradhavan samsareshu asurishu yonishu eva ajasram aham kshipami. So dvishataha, these people who are hateful, kruran, which is like cruel, ashubhan, kind of inauspicious, the like terrible people, and then tan, these people, they naradhaman, the worst of men. So samsareshu asurishu yonishu. So in the vast ajasram, the vast cycles of birth and death, samsareshu asurishu yonishu. So the demonic wombs or rebirth with a demonic disposition or evil disposition. Aham kshipami. I constantly throw them in this vast cycles of birth and death to be born in demonic conditions. So if they lead a terrible life doing this thing, they're again born with demonic qualities. So aham dvishata kruran
Tanaham dvishatah kruran.
samsareshu naradhaman
Sansareshu naradhaman.
shipam yajasram ashubhan
Kshipamya jasra ashubhan.
asurishveva yonishu.
Asurishveva yonishu.
Then he says, Asurim yonim apanna mudha janmani janmani mam aprapyaiva kaunteya tato yantyadhamam gatim. So, again and again, these deluded people are born with demonic traits and they fail to attain the supreme. They sink to the lowest level. So, Kaunteya, son of Kunti, Asurim yonim apannaha mudhaha. These deluded people who are born in the demonic wombs, who are born to, again, with demonic traits. Mam aprapya, not attaining me, eva tataha janmani janmani adhamam gatim yanti. And birth after birth, they go to lower and lower state. They sink to the lowest state. Now, we have seen earlier in the 9th chapter elsewhere that there is always an option to come out of the demonic state and tread the path of goodness. But people who choose not to adhere to the wisdom that has been laid out in works like the Gita, they are subjected to rebirth with demonic traits again and again. So if they continue on the same path without changing their mind, without realizing that there is something better, then it's a downward spiral. So they keep going down further and further. Asurim yonim apanna.
Asurim yonim apanna.
Mudha janmani janmani.
मूढ़ा जन्मनि जन्मनि
माम अप्राप्यैव कौन्तेय
माम प्राप्येव कौन्तेय
ततो यधमां गतिम्.
ततो यान्त्यधमां गतिम्.
तो यान्ति अधमां गतिम्. Then he says, Trividham narakasyedam dwaram nashanamaatmanah kamah krodas tatha lobhah tasmadeta trayam tyajet. Very nice, simple verse. It says, lust, anger, and greed are the three gates to naraka, or loosely hell, that degrade the self. One should renounce these three. Very simple. Kamaha, lust, excessive desire, then krodha, which is anger, rage, and tatha lobha, and greed, avarice. Idam atmanaha nashanam, this destroys the self. This narakasya trividham dwaram. So this is a threefold gate to the naraka that destroys the self. So, and tasmat etat trayam tyajet. Therefore, renounce these three things, right? Excuse me. So, lust, anger, and greed, these are basically impediments in the path to self realization. So, in this context, Naraka is a confused state of mind that degrades the self. So, in a literal sense, Naraka is like, can be loosely we say hell, but it's a transient place, where after death, one is punished for the papa or the evils or the crimes or the sins that they have committed. And after they finish their quota of the punishment, they are reborn into they take birth again in human life or some form, and they again try to elevate their standard. This is the idea. So trividham narakasyedam
त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं
dwaram nashanamaatmanah
द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः
kamah krodhas tatha lobah
कामः क्रोधस्तथा लोभः
tasmadetat tyajet.
तस्मादेतत्त्रयं त्यजेत्.
एतैर विमुक्तः कौन्तेय तमोद्वारैस्त्रिभिः नरः आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयः ततो याति परां गतिम्. So, one who is liberated from these three gates of darkness, he elevates his inner self and attains the highest goal. Kaunteya, son of Kunti, tamodvaraihi etaihi. These three are the gates of darkness, gates of tamas. Tamodvaraihi etaihi. So from this, tribihi, this threefold, or these three gates, vimuktaha naraha, one who is the man who is the woman who is free from this three gates of darkness. Atmanaha shreyaha acharati. They elevate their inner self. They move towards a better state. Tataha param gatim yati. Then they attain the ultimate goal once they go beyond these three gates. Etair vimuktaha kaunteya
एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेय
तमोद्वारैस्त्रिभिर्नरः
तमोद्वारैस्त्रिभिर्नरः
आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयः
आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयः
ततो याति परां गतिम्.
ततो याति परां गतिम्.
Then next he says, Yaha shastra vidhim utsrujya vartate kama karatah nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. So one who ignores the established rules and follows his own preferences driven by selfish desires does not attain perfection, happiness, or liberation. Very beautiful, very important verse. Yaha shastra vidhim utsrujya. One who cares two hoots for the traditional treatises, one who does not value the law of the land, one who does not value the developments in science. So basically with no regard for established norms, basically the anarchist mindset, right? So Kama karataha vartate. So they are just driven by selfish desires, their whims and fancies, and they do whatever they want, not bothered about the rules of any, at any level. Saha siddhim na avapnoti. They never attain a high level. They never attain perfection. They are not even at a mediocrity. They are worse than mediocres. Right? Na sukham na param gatim. So they neither attain excellence and competence in their field, neither are they happy, nor do they attain the highest goal. So this is the worst thing. At least somebody is very competent in their work, what they do, and they are happy and they don't attain the highest goal. That is okay. Somebody is very happy doing nothing without any expectation and does not attain any competence, does not get any highest goal. It is fine. And without being happy, without having excellence, you cannot go to the highest goal. So there is anyway, it's not possible. So they are not able to accomplish anything in this life. So people who are not bothered about the rules, people who are only driven by selfish desires, they don't get anywhere. So the idea here is that we have so much of valuable wisdom available to us from various people, whether it's people from the past or people of today. There are a lot of wise people even today. So we have the opportunity to access the wisdom of so many people, right? So if we fail to do that, then it is our foolishness. Now, when Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight, Arjuna has to use his knowledge of martial arts and archery and everything and fight. He's not telling him how to hold the bow, how to release the arrow. That Arjuna knows very well. So what is important, Shastras, like, whether Gita or Upanishad, any of these things, they tell us the basic principles of our life that, which are for the eternal aspects of our life, for the long-standing, details. Upanishad will not tell you how to write a code in Python. It will not tell you how to pass your 12th standard physics exam. Upanishads are for even more basic level of understanding of life. What you need to practically accomplish is different in every field. But it is important, therefore, to realize that people who are only driven by selfish desires and not bothered about the rules, they never attain everything. They are impediment. They are not a support to humanity. Yaha shastra vidhim utsrijya.
Yaha shastra vidhim utsrijya.
Vartate kama karataha.
Vartate kama karataha.
Nasa siddhim avapnoti.
Nasa siddhim avapnoti.
Na sukham na param gatim.
Na sukham na param gatim.
Then finally he says, Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya vyavasthitau nyatva shastra noktam karma kartum iharhasi. So, therefore, let the words of the wise be your guide in determining what should be done and what should not be done. So, having understood the mandate of the scriptures, you should act accordingly. So, the words of the wise are very important in order to guide you to lead a good quality life. Tasmat, therefore, karya plus akarya, karya vyavasthitau te shastram pramanam. So, karya vyavasthitau, in order to determine what should be done, what should not be done, what is karya and what is akarya, shastram pramanam. The shastra are the words of the wise, the wisdom of the ages. This is the authority. Shastra vidhanoktam karma jnatva iha kartum arhasi. So Shastra vidhanoktam karma. So the actions that have been prescribed in the Shastra, that have been suggested in the text, that the mandate of the scriptures, if you the works that have been prescribed in the scripture, if you having learned that jnatva iha kartum arhasi, it is, you should act accordingly here and right now. Tasmat shastram pramanam te.
Tasmat shastram pramanam te.
So, tasmat plus shastram will become tasmat shastram. It's a special sandhi in Sanskrit. Tasmat shastram pramanam te.
Tasmat Shastram
So it
pramanam.
becomes tasma cha. So tasmat shastram.
Tasmas shastram.
No, so it is tasmat plus shastram. So tasmat chatram. The sh doesn't come at all. Tasmat chatram. The
Tasmas
chastram.
tasmas shastram.
Pramanante. Karya karya vyavasthitau.
कार्य व्यवस्थितौ
ज्ञात्वा शास्त्र विधानोक्तम
ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं
कर्म कर्तुमिहार्हसि.
कर्म कर्तुमिहार्हसि.
This is one of those kind of weird sandhis, like we have like a mricha katika, right? Mrit plus shakatika will become mricha katika. So tasmat plus shastram will become tasmat chastram. So it's it's a little bit of a tongue twister. So with this, we come to the end of the 16th chapter. Since this 15th and 16th, these are pretty small chapters, I think it will be quite active. I mean, it will be there in your active memory because we covered the whole thing in like a couple of days. But for what it's worth, we'll just quickly go through what the chapter says. The opening of the 16th chapter, the first three shlokas, they cover the divine qualities. We saw this earlier as well in the second and the 12th and the 13th adhyaya, where there's a list of all the noble qualities and a lot of repetition in these qualities as well. But it's important that these things are reinforced. So things like self-control and generosity, pursuit of knowledge, freedom from anger, serenity, modesty, not finding fault with other people, an absence of fickleness, kindness to all beings, absence of malice. All these qualities are very good. I mean, these are all the divine qualities. Now, then he talks about the demonic qualities. What are the demonic qualities? The fourth shloka is hypocrisy, arrogance, vanity, cruelty, ignorance, anger. All these things are the people with a demonic nature. Now, divine qualities lead to liberation, whereas demonic qualities lead to bondage. Krishna reassures Arjuna, you are born with divine qualities. Don't worry, you will reach the highest level. There has been enough discussion about the divine qualities in the earlier part. So Krishna focuses in the rest of the chapter a great deal of time on the demonic qualities because it's also important for us to know what not to do. One is what to be done and what not to do. And also it prepares us to know what kind of problematic people can be there and to keep away from such people, right? It's also important. So when we say dharma, when we use the term dharma, and I told you it is sustainability. When you want to have sustainability, it is very important for us to remove the unsustainable elements also, right? So just because you are having, let's say you're cultivating a garden, it's not only important for you to nourish the plants, pour water and ensure good sunlight, but also it's important to remove the weeds. It's also important to ensure that rodents don't come there, monkeys don't come there. So you want to protect the garden also in some sense from the from adharma. From in that context, adharma is what is not sustainable for that garden, and you want to nourish what is sustainable for that. So therefore, it is important for us to know that these are the demonic qualities, even though we may be nobody thinks that we are demonic, right? We all think that we are having divine qualities. We all, everybody is in the movie of their life, everybody is the hero. Nobody want to be a villain in the movie of their life, correct? So we all think that we have got divine qualities. Let us assume that we all have divine qualities, but it's important to recognize what are the demonic qualities and stay away from people who have these qualities, right? It's important for us to know this. That's why he lists out their behavior is not good. They don't know what is to be done, what is not to be done. They're not honest. They're not pure. Then they don't have faith in a supreme governing, being. Then they are drunk with pride and hypocrisy. They're clinging on to unquenchable passions. They act with impure motives. Until their last breath, they are craving for their desires to be fulfilled. They have anxieties. only thing they care about is the gratification of their sense pleasures, and they're driven by lust and anger. They amass wealth for enjoyment. They think, oh, I am so great, I've accomplished this today, I will do that tomorrow, I have defeated the enemies, I will give dana when I want, I will go to temple when I want, I will do whatever I want, I will rejoice as per my will. They don't even value the fact that there are so many people who are working for their welfare. They don't realize that there are things beyond their control. They are so full of themselves and carried away by all these countless fanciful thoughts. They are caught in the web of illusion. They're addicted to gratification of senses, and they plunge into the hell of their own making. And they're arrogant, they're stubborn, they're intoxicated by wealth and pride, they're clinging on to egoism and vanity, they're, ahankara, bala, darpa, all these egoism, and they're clinging, exhibiting force and rage and lust, and they undermine the divine presence in themselves and in others. So again and again, Krishna says, I throw these people into the demonic wombs, and they go into a further downward spiral. Finally, he says lust, anger, and greed. These are the three gates to the naraka that degrade the self. One should stay away from them. One should renounce them. And only when you go beyond the three gates of naraka, you go to the higher level. And people who ignore the established rules and follow their own preferences, their own whims and fancies, driven by selfish desire, they don't attain perfection or competence. They don't attain basic happiness, and they don't attain the highest goal as well. So therefore, it's very important that the words of the wise are your constant guide in whatever you're helping you determine what to do, what you should avoid. And once you understand the mandate of the scriptures, once you understand the pronouncements of the Veda in practice, and once you understand it, then you should bring it into practice. So having understood it, you should try and practice it. So there are so many prescriptions. Of course, we can use our own viveka and select what makes sense and adhere to that, and then go forward in our journey. So this is roughly the 16th adhyaya in a nutshell. Now let us go to the 17th chapter. Okay, so here the 17th chapter can be seen as a companion chapter to the 14th. Again, we're talking about sattva, rajas, and tamas. So Arjuna uvacha, ye shastra vidhim utsrijya yajante shraddhayanvitaha tesham nishtha ka Krishna sattvamaho rajas tamaha. So just now Krishna said people who undermine the value of the wise sayings in the scriptures, they are not going to attain any state. So therefore, Arjuna's question is, what happens when a person sincerely engages in worship but fails to follow the prescribed rules? Is that an act of sattva, rajas, or tamas? So sometimes we may be having the intent, but we don't know the methodology. What happens in that case? That is the question. It says, Krishna, ye shastra vidhim utsrajya, those having left out the pronouncements of the shastra, shraddhaya anvitaha yajante. So who sincerely worship the Supreme, tesham nishtha tu ka. So what is what is the kind of nishtha? What is the kind of what is their stand? Is it sattvam, aho, rajah, tamaha? Is it called sattva? Is it called rajas? Is it tamas? Is this kind of conduct of somebody? Is it sattva, rajas, or tamas? So Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna uvacha.
Ye shastra vidhim utsrajya.
Ye shastra vidhim utsrajya.
Yajante shraddhayanvitaha.
Yajante shraddhayanvitaha.
Tesham nishtha tu ka Krishna.
Tesham nishtha tu ka Krishna.
Sattvamaho rajas tamaha.
Sattvamaho rajas tamaha.
Krishna replies, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Trividha bhavati shraddha dehinam sa swabhavaja satviki rajasi chaiva tamasi cheti tam shruno. So, human attitudes are of three kinds, sattva, rajasa, tamas. They are born of one's own nature. Listen as I explain further. Dehinam swabhavaja. So, something which is born from nature, from one's own nature, from the dehi, that is the inner self, from the nature of that it is born. Shraddha sa satviki rajasi tamasi cha iti trividha bhavati. So, Shraddha, or the human attitude, human faith, they are of three kinds: satviki, rajasi, tamasi. So sattva, rajas, tamas, trividha, threefold. Tam shrunu, listen to it as I explain further. We also know that in any individual the gunas prevail up to various extents, and when he says swabhavaja, born from one's own swabhava, it basically refers to the innate and the untutored aspect of the personality, right? So, Sri Bhagavan Vacha,
Shri Bhagavan Vacha,
Trividha Bhavati Shraddha,
Trividha Bhavati Shraddha,
Dehinam Sa Swabhavaja,
Dehinam Sa Swabhavaja,
Satviki Rajasi Chaiva,
Satviki Rajasi Chaiva,
Tamasi Cheti Tam Shruno.
Tamasi Cheti Tam Shruno.
Sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata, shraddha mayoyam purusho yo yachraddah sa eva saha. Each one's temperament conforms with his or her inborn nature. A person is made up of his or her attitude. He is what his attitude is, or she is what her attitude is. So, Bharata, descendant of Bharata, the address to Arjuna, Sarvasya, of all people, among all people, Sarvasya, Sattvanurupa Shraddha Bhavati. So, Sattvanurupa Shraddha Bhavati. So, in everybody's case, their faith, their attitude, their temperament confirms or aligns with their basic quality, their inborn nature. Ayam Purushaha Shraddhamayaha. So a person is what his faith is, a person is what his attitude is. Yaha Yat Shraddha Saha Saha Eva. He is what his faith is, he is what his attitude is. He is made up of his attitudes, he is made up of what he believes in. Sattvanurupa Sarvasya.
Sattvanurupa Sarvasya.
Sorry, Sattvanurupa Sarvasya, plural, yeah. Shraddha Bhavati Bharata.
Shraddha Bhavati Bharata.
Shraddha Mayoyam Purusho.
Shraddha Mayoyam Purusho.
Yo Yachaddah Sa Eva Saha.
Yo Yachaddah Sa Eva Saha.
So again here, Yat plus Shraddha become Yat Shraddha. So Shraddha. So this is slightly like a tongue twister. Yo Yat Chadraha Sa Eva Saha.
Yo Yachhadraha Sa Eva Saha.
Correct. Very good. Then he says, Yajante Satvika Devan Yaksha Rakshamsi Rajasaha Pretan Bhuta Ganams Chanye Yajante Tamasa Janaha. So starts off with people with the nature of Sattva, the Sattvic people, they worship the Devas. Those of the trait of Rajas, the Rajasika, they worship the Yakshas and the Rakshasas. And those of Tamas, they worship evil spirits and ghosts. So, Satvikaha Devan Yajante, those who are endowed with Sattva, they worship the Devas, who are the divine celestial beings, the great beings with good qualities. Rajasaha Yaksha Rakshamsi. So the people who are Rajasic in nature, they propitiate the Yakshas and Rakshasas, who are the divine, semi-divine, and the Yakshas are semi-divine, Rakshasas are demons. Or you can call them like spirits with special powers. Then Anye Tamasaha janaha pretan bhutaganancha yajante. Those with the nature of tamas, they are worshipping evil spirits and ghosts and things like that. So we become what we worship, right? We try to attain that level of what we worship. We saw this earlier also. Therefore, it makes sense for us to try to keep a high ideal in front of us so that we can raise our standard. Whereas if we keep our ideal as somebody who's already not of high quality, then where is the question of us raising our standard? So it's important to have the right role models. And we have the right role models even when we are growing up as young children. The right role models give us a direction to our life, and we get inspired by the people. But if the role model is some rogue, then naturally our life becomes goes downward. So that's why it's very important to, even they say you should have the right company. People who are in an impressionable age, if they are exposed to people with bad traits, they will pick up those things because they think that is fashionable. Whereas people who are of the sattvika nature, they look up to the devas, to the divine beings who have got the noble qualities and things like that. The people with the nature of tamas, they look at some evil spirits and ghosts and some. So rather than taking this as a literal thing, we should try to understand that people who are more endowed with sattva, they look to elevate themselves. So that is what is basically is trying to say. So yajante sattvika devan.
Yajante satvika devan.
Yaksha rakshamsi rajasaha.
Yaksha rakshansi rajasaha.
Pretan bhuta ganams chanye.
Pretan bhutan gananschanne.
No, pretan bhuta ganams chanye.
Pretan bhuta gananschanne.
So what happens? Pretan bhuta ganan cha anye. So all these are added together. It becomes pretan bhuta ganams chanye.
Pretan bhuta gananschanne.
Correct. Yajante tamasa janaha.
Yajante tamasa janaha.
Very good. Then ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante ye tapo janaha dambhahankara samyuktaha kamaraga balanvitaha. So this is one, and the next also is connected to this. So कर्षयंत शरीरस्थम भूतग्रामम अचेतसः माम चैवांत शरीरस्थम तान विद्यासुर निश्चयान. So these two together can be taken as one unit. So those people who perform austerities motivated by false pride and ego, they're driven by the force of lust and passion, they indeed violate the utterances of the scriptures, the sayings of the scriptures. They foolishly torture their own body and also the divine spirit within. So know them to be of a demonic resolve. So dambha hankara samyukta, endowed with dambha, hypocrisy, and ahankara, arrogance, egoism. Dambha hankara samyuktaha, kama raga balanvitaha. So they are endowed with lust, passion, and force, right? So, or the force of lust and passion, can take it that way also. Achetasaha. So they are kind of mindless. They're not using their they're unaware. So they're not using their awareness to see, to realize. They're not contemplative. Achetasaha. Sharirastham bhutagramam antaha. Sharirastham mam eva karshayantaha ye janaha. So these people, they kind of they don't realize the divine within, and they foolishly torture their bodies. Then ashastra vihitam ghoram. So that's something which is not prescribed by the scriptures, and it is terrible. The ghora, some practices are terrible. Tapaha tapyante tan asura nishchayan vidhi. So know them to be a demonic resolve. So there are some people who think it is a noble thing to subject oneself or others to torture in the name of religion. So beating oneself, doing some self-mutilation, all these things are atrocious. So Krishna reminds Arjuna any exaggerated austerities or mortifications of the body are unwarranted to the point of being demonic. One has to follow Deha Dharma also. It is not just in the quest of trying to attain the highest. We should not violate our Deha Dharma. We should not violate the supreme that resides within. So, therefore, people who have these exaggerated austerities and who do all sorts of weird things, these are not at all prescribed in our tradition. We can clearly see this. Ashastra vihitam ghoram
अशास्त्रविहितं घोरं
tapyante ye tapo janaha
तप्यन्ते ये तपो जनाः
dambhahankara samyuktaha
दम्भाहङ्कारसंयुक्ताः
kama raga balanvitaha
कामरागबलान्विताः
karshayantah sharirastham
कर्षयन्तः शरीरस्थं
भूतग्रामम अचेतसः
भूतग्राममचेतसः
मां चैवान्त शरीरस्थं
मां चैवान्तः शरीरस्थं
तान् विद्यासुर निश्चयान्.
तान् विद्यासुरनिश्चयान्.
Yeah. Then he says, Aharastvapi sarvasya trividho bhavati priyah yajñas tapas tatha danam tesham bhedam imam shruno. So food that is dear to a person is also of three kinds. So also with the ways of yajna, dana and tapas. Let me explain these differences to you. So aharaha tu api sarvasya trividaha priyaha bhavati. So aharaha, food is also the food that is dear to people is also of three kinds. So sattvic food, rajasic food, tamasic food. Then similarly, bhavati tatha yajna tapah danam. So there is sattvika yajna, sattvika dana, sattvika tapas, rajasika dana, rajasika yajna, rajasik. So all these have the three qualities. Tesham imam bhedam shunu. So listen to the distinctions between all these: food, yajna, dana, and tapas. आहारस्त्वपि सर्वस्य
आहारस्त्वपि सर्वस्य
त्रिविधो भवति प्रियः
त्रिविधो भवति प्रियः
यज्ञस्तपस्तथा दानं
यज्ञस्तपस्तथा दानं
तेषां भेदमिमं शृणु.
तेषां भेदमिमं शृणु.
So now he is going to start talking about sattvic food, rajasic food, and tamasic food. So आयुः सत्व बलारोग्य सुख प्रीति विवर्धनाः रस्याः स्निग्धाः स्थिराः हृद्याः आहाराः सात्विक प्रियाः. So the kind of food that is dear to those of the nature of sattva are foods that promote longevity, foods that promote vitality, stamina, health, happiness, and contentment. Also foods that are tasty, that are mild, nourishing, and pleasant. These are the ones that are dear to those of the nature of sattva. So ayuhu, longevity; sattva, vitality; bala, strength; balarogya, health; balarogya, sukha, so happiness; preeti vivardhanaha, and the foods that help in the increase of all these things, that promote. Vivardhana is to increase, or that which nourishes or which supports or which makes these things grow. Rasyaha, which is tasty; snigdha, which is kind of gentle; and sthira, which is kind of what do you say? Sthira is kind of firm, nourishing. Hridya, pleasant. Aharaha satvika priyaha. So these are all the foods that are dear to the satvika people. So ayus sattva balarogya.
आयुः सत्व बलारोग्य.
Probably it should be ayus sattva. Ayuhu plus sattva become ayus sattva. Probably there's a mistake. Anyway, sukha preeti vivardhanaha
प्रीतिविवर्धनाः
रस्याः स्निग्धाः स्थिरा हृद्या
रस्याः स्निग्धाः स्थिरा हृद्या
आहाराः सात्विकप्रियाः.
आहाराः सात्विकप्रियाः.
Very good. Then Katvamla Lavanatyushna Tikshna Ruksha Vidahinaha Ahara Rajasasyeshta Dukkha Shokamaya Pradaha. So, foods that cause pain and sorrow and sickness, and foods that are bitter, sour, salty, excessively hot or spicy, dry, pungent, these are dear to those of nature of Rajas. So, Katu. So, Katu Amla Lavana. So, Katu is like kind of bitter, Amla is sour, and then Lavana, salty. Lavana, Ati Ushna, so very hot, excessively hot. Ati Ushna, Tikshna, very spicy. Ruksha, very dry. Ruksha, Tikshna, Ruksha, Vidahinaha. So they are kind of pungent. Dukkha Shoka Maya Pradaha. So that which causes dukkha and shoka. So these are the foods that cause pain and sorrow and sickness. Ahara rajasasya ishtaha. These are the foods that are liked, that are dear to those of the nature of rajas. So katvamla lavanat yushna
कट्वम्ल लवणातुष्ण
tikshna ruksha vidahinaha
तीक्ष्णरूक्षविदाहिनः
ahara rajasasyeshta
आहारा राजसस्येष्टा
Rajasasya ishtavikam rajasasyeshta. Dukkha,
राजसस्येष्टा
yeah, dukkha shokamaya pradaha.
दुःखशोकामयप्रदाः.
Then finally comes to the tamas. So yatayamam gatarasam puti paryushitam chayat uchishtam api chamedhyam bhojanam tamasa priyam. So foods that are insipid, stale, rotten, leftover, filthy, unhygienic, these are dear to those of the nature of tamas. So, yatayamam gatarasam puti paryushitam cha uchishtam api cha amedhyam cha yat bhojanam tat tamasa priyam. So, that are, which are insipid, yatayamam gatarasam, where it's all the taste is gone, it's become stale. Puti is like it's rotten. Then paryushitam also, it's like kind of filthy. Uchishtam is leftover. Amedhyam is something which is unhygienic, not to be eaten. These are the kind of thing. Yat bhojanam tat tamasa priyam. So people in tamas, these foods are dear to than those of nature of tamas. Yatayamam gatarasam
यातयामं गतरसं
puti paryushitam chayat
पूतिपर्युषितं च यत्
uchishtam api chamedhyam
उच्छिष्टमपि चामेद्यं
tamasa priyam.
भोजनं तामसप्रियम्.
So these three verses talk about the kinds of foods that are dear to the people of the three gunas. There is no mention of any specific kind of food. So Bhagavad Gita doesn't say, oh, don't eat onions, or don't eat meat, or don't eat dosa, don't eat nothing. Bhagavad Gita doesn't say anything about any specific food. It only talks about the kinds of foods that are aligned to people's tastes. Now, when we were translating these verses, there was a discussion I had with Dr. Sri Krishna, and we were saying, sometimes people are not in a condition to eat good quality food. They're either in poverty or in certain kind of strange situations. What then? Is it people they can't afford food? Then do they become tamasic and so on? So then we were discussing, and he came up with this explanation, which I thought was very good. And then we also added it into the text in our translation. So these three verses talk about the foods that are you know, which we can, what we can, look at, the way we can look at this is that this is an indication of what they don't mind eating. So a person who relishes stale food will certainly relish freshly cooked food. A person who enjoys something which is very spicy will certainly enjoy something which is also supporting the longevity and that makes him happy. So a person who relishes the foods that are told in under tamas, he will also relish the foods which are freshly prepared and very tasty and rich in nutrients and so on, but not the other way around. A person who is of a sattvic nature will not be able to tolerate stale or insipid or badly cooked food. So what this basically tells us is these are the kinds of food that they don't mind. And because of laziness, the people who are in the tamas, they would rather have stale food than go work hard and prepare a fresh meal. They rather sit at home and not, do anything. And now, of course, even for the tamasic people, freshly cooked food can come from Swiggy and Zomato, so that facility is there. But of course, if you are tamasic, it's also difficult for you to earn money. So then you won't have the money to order food on these things. But basically, I mean, more than anything else, we have to understand that this is something that these are the kind of foods that are mostly aligned to people of this sattva, rajas, and tamas. Okay, we have another 9 minutes. We'll try to finish the next set. So these are all in sets of 3. So now he's spoken about the food. Let's look at the 3 where he talks about the yajna. So I'll take the 3, although they are not logically like one leading to the other. There are 3 different shlokas, but I'll take them together because they all talk about yajna. Okay. So this is the nature of people who are having the nature of sattva and how they look at yajna. Aphalakankshibhir yajno vidhi drishtoya ijyate yashtavyam eveti manah samadhayasa satvikaha. This is the nature of sattva. Then abhisandhayatu phalam dambhartham api chaivayat ijyate bharata shreshta tam yajnam vidhi rajasam. This is the nature of rajas. And then finally, vidhihinam asrishtannam mantrahinam adakshinam shraddha virahitam yajnam tamasam parichakshate. So this is the nature of tamas, the way in which tamas will do yajna. So we'll look at the 11th now. The yajna that is carefully performed according to the scriptures without any thought of reward, with the sense that it must be performed, is the nature of sattva. So, aphalakangshibihi, without expectation of any fruit of labor, yashtavyam eva iti manaha. Yashtavyam. This is something that should be done. This worship must be done. This yajna must be done. With this in mind, samadhaya, keeping this in mind, vidhi drishtaha. So keeping in mind the injunctions of the scriptures, yaha yajna ijyate sa satvikaha. One who does this according to the scriptures without any thought of reward and thinking it must be done is of the nature of sattva. Then the next is the yajna that is performed for the sake of rewards or merely to show off is of the nature of rajas. So Bharata Shrestha addressing Arjuna, phalam tu abhisandhaya dambhartam api. So one is expecting great rewards and also for the sake of show and hypocrisy, just show off that I'm doing this. Dambhartam apicha eva yat ijyate. One who worships in this format, tam yajnam rajasam vidhi. Know this to be the nature of yajna that is performed by the Rajasic people. And finally, in the case of the Tamasic people, the yajna that is performed contrary to the scriptures, without any sincerity, without offering food to people, without any sacred text recited, without respect to guests, without paying the officiator of the ritual. This is the nature of yajna conducted by Tamasic people. So vidhihinam, so you're not following any rules. Then Astrishtanam, so without offering any food to anybody. Mantrahinam, without any mantras recited. Then adakshinam, without paying the dakshina, without paying the fees of the purohita, of the official, of the ritvik, of anybody who is performing. Then shraddha virahitam, without sincerity, without any faith, without sincerity, yajnam tamasam parichakshate. That kind of yajna is tamasic. No respect to guests, no respect to the people who have come, no fees paid to the officiator. So absolute chaotic way of doing the yajna is the tamasic way. So let us look at the three one after the other. Aphala kangshibhir yajno
अफलाकाङ्क्षिभिर्यज्ञो
vidhi drishto ya ijyate
विधिदृष्टो य इज्यते
यष्टव्यम एवेति मनः
यष्टव्यं मेवेति मनः
समाधाय स सात्विकः.
समाधाय स सात्विकः.
Then abhisandhayatu phalam.
अभिसन्धायतु तु फलम्.
Then dambhartamapi chaivayat.
दम्भार्थमपि चैव यत्
Ijyate bharata shrestha.
युज्यते भरतश्रेष्ठ
Tam yajnam vidhi rajasam.
तं यज्ञं विद्धि राजसम्.
Then vidihinam asrishtannam.
विधिहीनम् असृष्टान्नं
Mantrahinam adakshinam.
मन्त्रहीनम् अदक्षिणम्
Shraddha virahitam yajnam.
श्रद्धाविरहितं यज्ञं
Tamasam parichakshate.
तामसं परिचक्षते.
Okay, so we'll stop here for today with the shlokas, because then there is the next part is we will come to the austerity, right? So in austerity, what happens is that we saw yajna. We'll come to tapa. So here tapa is of three kinds. He'll talk about austerity of the body, austerity of speech, and austerity of mind. And each of this he'll talk about the sattvic, rajasic, and so this threefold austerity. So when the definition of austerity itself is defined in this manner of body, speech, and mind, then the threefold austerity, when it's performed by sattvika, how is it, rajasic, and tamasic? Then when he comes to dana, 20, 21, 22 will be about what is dana, the sattvika dana, rajasika dana, and tamasika dana. Finally, there is a little bit about this idea of Om Tat Sat and Yajna Dana Tapas. So we'll be able to complete this comfortably tomorrow. We'll also see if we can quickly do a review of the chapter, and maybe Thursday, India time, our class, we can do a bit of introduction. May spill over to the Friday class, or it may get over on Thursday itself, not a problem. And then we will resume with the 18th Adhyaya. So that's the general plan. 18th Adhyaya has about 78 shlokas. I think it should be done by 31st. May not be 31st. It may drag on for be another few days. Okay, there's a question. In which category would Rajasuya Ashwamedha Yagas conducted by Yudhishthira? So these are definitely Sattvika Yajnas, because it is done after careful preparation. When he does the Rajasuya, for example, he finds out from people whether it is a right thing to do. He asks Krishna whether I'm qualified to take up this, and then it is all done according to the scriptures, with the food, with everything taken care of, without any cutting corners, but it is with the with certain expectations. So here there is all these yajnas, Ashwamedha, Rajasuya, these are all called Kshatriya yajnas. They are done with certain expectation, but even there, to do it sincerely and follow the procedure and as much as possible adhere to the norms, that is important, and that is what Yudhishthira also does in the Mahabharata. So you can call them as Sattvika Yagas, definitely. There is no two things about that. Because carefully performed, and it is done because it's something to be done, and following all the rules and regulations, keeping in mind the welfare of the larger community. So since all these things are there, we can definitely call it a sattvic yajna. Okay, so I think with that we come to the end of today's session. Yaga and yajna are the same thing. Vibhu Bharadwaj had a question. So yaga and yajna basically the same thing. It's just a different terminology. All right, so I think there are no more questions. If there's anything, you can just ping me and we will take it up. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Hariji.
Thank you, Sangeeta ji, for reciting.